Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 512, Area Movement Games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
The Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Go to their website, check out their amazing product. We love it. We talk about it every week because we love it. Such a great, high-quality product. Goes on any table. Most any playing surface can now become a game table. Go find one for yourself and enhance every game night at GameToppersLLC.com.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I am Douglas Stewart.
And I'm Nathan Howard.
We would love for you to head over to our website, see what we have to offer there. We have links to all of our previous episodes. We have blogs for you to check out, photos. If you want to dive into how each of us became the gamers that we are, you can read each of our bios.
An origin story?
An origin story for all of Meeple Nation. How about that?
I don't know how epic it is.
It's a paragraph.
It's not an epic origin story, but an origin story nonetheless.
Yours was probably epic, Doug, I think.
Everything Doug does is epic.
Well,
that's
I
true.
mean, epic is my middle name.
It could be one sentence and it's still epic for Doug.
Wow.
I am Doug. Epic!
Boom.
We also have a link to our Patreon page on our website. We love our patrons, and we appreciate all of the support that you give us and the help that you give us to improve the podcast for you. We've been bringing out bonus content that you have early access to, and if you want early access to those things and to help us improve the podcast, we would love for you to click that link, head over to the Patreon page, and any support you can give us, we greatly appreciate. Finally, if you have any questions or comments or anything that you would like to reach out to us about, please email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We talk about Salvatore a lot. He emails us almost on a weekly basis with questions and comments, and we love to read those and discuss some of the stuff that he brings up to us. If anybody else has any comments or questions, we would love to hear from you. Reach out to us, meeplenation@gmail.com.
Also, speaking of reaching out, Jody, one of our patrons, has also reached out and said, hey, if anyone's interested, I'm on BGA. So Jody and I have been playing a handful of games on BGA, and Jody is by far a Sewell player than I, and also a superior Acropolis player than I, and also a superior Seven Wonders Architects. Apparently, Jody is superior in all ways.
I was going to say, is Jody just Nathan 2.0?
Yeah.
Do we just need to get Jody here?
Probably do the podcast better too.
That's
That
awesome.
is fun. Jody and I have played, I think, 6 games now, and so
if you want to play some games with us or have a question or anything like that, please reach out at meeplenation@gmail.com. And that transitions us into my favorite time of every podcast, where we get to talk about some of the great games that we've been playing in the last little while. It is highlight time. Andy, what do you have for us this week?
Some of you may recall that I had committed to play Petrichor before the end of the year last year.
how did that go?
I hit my goal.
Oh, way to go.
I
Nice.
did. I got a chance to play it. And I think I might call that game.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Ah, that's too bad. I hate
don't
hearing that, but like they can't all be winners, right?
Yeah. Well, and I need to play it. I played it with just my wife, and it definitely has some take that in it. And yeah, that's not her style of game. It's not really our style of game so much. There's the area control, a bit of take that involved. I mean, it's okay, but it's probably one I'm going to call It's All Gone this year, or at least try to. I have all the expansions for it, so I'm hoping I will be able to move it. And I don't cull games, so that says a lot.
I was just going to say, like, you don't cull games. Like, it's actually big that you would say, like, I am going to cull a game.
It hasn't happened yet, so.
And that's true. The proof will be in the pudding, but we'll see.
Well, like I said, I need to play it one more time with more than 2 players. but I don't foresee that experience being much better than I had with Sabrina and I. So if it's not, which means I need to play it one more time before SaltCon happens, but if it's not a better experience, then yeah, it's going to be, I'm going to attempt to call it at SaltCon.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Petrichor, cool word, amazing smell. Not a great game.
Not a great game, apparently.
Well, and I think it depends on the person.
Absolutely. Doug and I are fully aware that Take That is not an element that Andy really enjoys.
It's and not one that I enjoy very much either.
And probably less so, it's causing spousal disputes, maybe?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say spousal abuse.
Maybe causing that, too.
It's definitely time to call the game then.
Yeah, for sure.
And we all know Sabrina has the upper hand there, too.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
We fear for your safety, Andy.
It's been nice knowing you. Maybe we can get Jody to replace you.
Oh, nice.
I hate hearing, games that are stinkers, but
yeah.
Yeah, and I've been curious about that one for a long time because I remember when that one was coming out, because this is a 2008 game, 2018 game, I believe.
Yep.
I remember it from quite a ways back and thinking like, oh, that looks like a pretty cool game, sounds like kind of a cool game, but doesn't sound like it made the cut.
It may still. We're still up in the air. I need to bring it to game night, and we just need to play it, especially while the rules are at least somewhat fresh in my mind. And we just played the base game. We didn't put any of the expansions in either, so...
Oh, you've really sold me on it.
I'm anxious to play it.
You should be. It may be one of those situations like...
Carlos Magnus?
No.
That game sucks.
Attica?
That game sucks too.
I like Attica. 2 players is best though.
Absolutely.
It has to be 2 players. No, it may be like mythology game. What am I thinking of? Champions of Midgard. It may end up being like Champions of Midgard, where
you need that expansion.
The game sucked until Valhalla came out, and you're like, oh, okay, now the game's fixed. It's now fun again, or it is fun for the first time.
Yeah, it still always takes me back just a little bit when I hear you say that, because you use that as an example from time to time. I only ever played it with the Valhalla expansion, so I don't know it any other way other than just being an amazing game. It kind of hurts me when you say like, oh, that game sucked without the expansion. But here's the thing. I think without the expansion, it probably did.
It did. It was definitely missing something. It honestly felt like it was one of those, yeah, we're going to hold this back and release this as an expansion. Whereas it had to have been planned with the base game.
Interesting.
It has to have it.
Well, maybe Petrichor will do that. Mostly I just hear you kind of backpedaling on your whole,
do you?
I'm going to call this idea. You're talking about playing it some more. And
I'm only talking about playing it once.
Now you're talking about it being hopeful that it's going to be amazing with expansions and...
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Oh, that didn't last long, did it?
That's why I said I'm not holding my breath.
All right. Well, hey, I had a fantastic opportunity this last weekend to play Destiny's Witchwood. So this is the new expansion
I'm excited.
For Destiny's. Okay, so really quick, for those who don't know, Destiny's is a 1 to 3 player game that came out in 2021 by Lucky Duck Games, and it was designed by a bunch of really talented people whose names I cannot pronounce, so I won't try. But it's an awesome game. The original game takes place in what I think is medieval France. It's like kind of the Joan of Arc time period. But it does a really outstanding job of capturing, I think, through the art, through the narrative, and through the music, because this is an app-assisted game, but it does a great job of capturing that sort of medieval, historical legend, gothic horror kind of vibe, bottles it up in a really fun way. Players take on the role of different characters, seeking out their destinies in a world that is revealed through cards that form a map and NPCs that are represented by little miniatures that go out onto the map.
Micro miniatures.
Micro miniatures. It has a great story. The app is buttery smooth. It has exploration and discovery in spades. And it has a great skill check system. Involves rolling dice. However, there are lots of ways to mitigate that dice through rolling bonus dice, gear items, and through what I think is a really intuitive and ingenious leveling up system. Anyway, it's a really fun game to play. It's elevated by the fact that not all characters are seeking these noble or heroic destinies. As Alfred puts it, some people just want to watch the world burn, and sometimes the character you choose just wants to watch the world burn. Anyway, it's kind of a fun twist to the objectives and immersion of the game. It's also made better by the fact that there are 2 expansions prior to the Witchwood expansion that are themed very different from the original. So there was Sea of Sand, which takes place in Madia, I believe. It's like a pirate fortress off the shores of North Africa. There's another expansion called Myth and Folklore, and the primary conceit of Myth and Folklore is that it pits players against these giant mythical creatures across different locations. Okay, so we've talked about Destinies before. We all like Destinies. I think we can all agree that the player count can be a little bit problematic because we wish that it played a little bit more. But other than that, I think we all hold this game in fairly high regard. The question is, what does Witchwood bring to the table? More of the same is maybe the fear or the belief. And the answer is, yeah, more of the same. It's more of the same amazing, incredible, world-exploring game that is Destinies. But I will say it does manage to kind of take Destinies just one step further. I wouldn't go as far as to say this is like a full evolution of the Destiny system, but it certainly is like a big leap forward in what they do. First of all, it has Celtic theme, or kind of a Celtic horror kind of theme. So a lot of it revolves around this idea that there are witches, focuses on that balance between mankind and the supernatural folklores and myths that are more supernatural in nature. If that theme sounds amazing, then this will definitely be your jam. And while the game is mechanically familiar, I think it does have some fun tricks up its sleeve. First of all, one of the things it introduces is paths. The original game, where the map was sort of created by these cards and it all was connected to each other, you now have different regions created by the cards, so different areas of the map that are accessible only by paths. What that means is when you trigger a path, like when you go interact with a path because you want to move from one part of the map to another, it lets the app interject sort of a random story element. Okay, I'm going through the woods. I happen upon a deer that's running through. Like, do I want to chase it down for potential food or other resources or see where it leads, or do I just let it go? I came across sort of a forest maze. Do I want to try to figure it out and see what it leads, or see where it leads to and see if there's treasure, whatever else might be there, or do I just continue down the path? It sort of interjects these story moments. There are traveling merchant that may have gear that you can only get if you stumble across them while you're on the path. I thought that was a really great introduction into the Destiny storytelling system, those random elements, especially since those are introduced by an app, because the app can control that, sort of inject that narrative where it's appropriate and where it flows in a really good way. I really liked that. The other big thing that I noticed with Witchwood, now when a scenario ends, it gives you a story, a summary of what just happened that is much more based on what you did as a player. You still have a winner. So in the game that I played, Cole and I played it. I won the game, but Cole, he was probably one turn behind me. On his next turn, he would have won. It was neck and neck kind of thing. When the end crawl played, it gave me sort of the victory spiel for my character, but then it transitioned into this, but also another legend was born that day, because of the valiant efforts of blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to give away like the story and what happened. It kind of gave him like a victory without him winning the game, which I thought was appropriate considering how well he had done at playing the game.
Right, how close
because the old Destiny system is, look, you have one person who wins and it doesn't matter what the other people did, they lost. And usually it's quite horrible. Right. It's like they went off and died in ignominy. They can be some pretty brutal endings. So I really liked that this was a little bit more of an ending based on how you played the game, which for such a narrative-driven game feels really appropriate to me. I think it's great. If you like Destinies, go check it out. It's fantastic. When they ran the crowdfunding for Witchwood, they also ran the crowdfunding for their new storage box, the new storage solution. And I have to say, it's amazing.
That's always nice when the storage comes out well.
Yes, because here's the primary reason why. It came with little numbered stickers for all the bottoms of the miniatures. So now all of the miniatures sit in these vacuum form trays. You can clearly see the number on the bottom of all of them.
Oh, that's nice.
And in the app, when it tells you to grab a figure, it lists the number underneath them. You have the tray right there. You just grab the number and pop it out. When it needs to go back in, you just look at the number and put it back in the number in the tray. Biggest problems with playing this game was trying to find the right mini for the right thing as you're going through it. It took forever.
Plus, they were so small that you had to, it wasn't just a quick look at that many to identify.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. So they solved that problem, which I love.
Great.
It has these really nice slide out drawers. Everything can set up and take down in just a matter of minutes. And one of the other things that I really like about it is that it's still small enough. Like they didn't force it to be bigger than it needed to be. It sits on my Calyx shelf, and I still have space for other games around it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Anyway, I don't know what the availability is of the storage solution, but I do know you can go get Witchwood at retail, and I recommend it. If you like Destinies, and Destinies is great. If you haven't checked it out, you should at least check out the base game. If you have played Destinies, Witchwood is a fantastic addition. It's a fantastic expansion. The story's good. It adds just a little bit more to the whole system and experience that is Destinies, and I really liked it.
It sounds like you did. We should have probably had me go before you, because my experience, my highlight, not nearly as gushing as that was. So I got the chance recently to be taught a game called Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space.
This sounds promising.
The title kind of perked my interest. You know, I've played the Escape from the Cursed Temple, Escape from Zombie City. So I was thinking along those lines.
Okay, so does it fall in that series?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was disappointed at that point.
All right.
A hidden roll team game. So I'm like, okay. My meter went up a little bit on that. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's give this a shot. Quite a while back, we talked about pet peeves. I experienced one of those pet peeves.
Please do tell.
I was taught a game, and I've done this before, right? I've taught a game that I'm not fully prepared, and usually most of those times I'm like, okay, this is going to be terrible. We're going to stop. I did it recently with you, Doug, when I was trying to remember Guildmasters, yeah. And there was just stuff I was just forgetting, and I'm like, I can't teach this. So I just backed out of that. However, this individual, bless their soul, did not. I was playing with your wife, Doug, and this was an event, acquaintances that you knew. I put my best foot forward. You walked away to play something else, Doug. And Andy, you and your wife weren't there at this time when this started. Dave was there. They were trying to get Dave to play, and I knew right off that this was not Dave's game. I knew it right off. It's not Andy's game, and it's not your game either, Doug. Trying to explain it, and Dave's, well, I got my grandkid here. I got to hold the baby. And then he went into the kitchen to eat. But anyways, so this game is you're on a ship. Onboard systems have failed, plunging the ship into darkness. But even worse, a mysterious alien plague has crept aboard and is transforming the human crew into horrendous monsters. So this is a team game. Half the players are playing as humans. The lesser part are playing. So you can, like, if you're playing an 8-player game, you have 5 humans, 3 aliens. You have sheet, lays out the way the ship is set up. It's a hex grid. Some of those spaces are blacked out so that, they're all in darkness, so you can hide in those. And then some of those places are white. What happens is everybody starts in a certain area. If you're an alien, you start on one side, and if you're a human, you start on the other side. Your goal, as the humans want to get to the escape pod, and if you're a human and you get to the escape pod, you win. And if the aliens catch all the humans, the aliens win.
What do they do to the humans, Nathan?
They just make them more aliens.
Oh.
It's a plague. Turns them into horrendous monsters.
They don't just help them to the escape pods?
No, they don't. Something about get in my belly or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, you make a move, and then if you are in the light, you will draw a card, and that card will allow you to say you have to tell the truth of where you are, you may fib where you are, or you may find equipment, and there's a variety of things that are going to affect that. So what you're going to do is if you're an alien, you want to try to make yourself so that you can fib to the locations where you are so that everybody thinks you're human, so that when you're running away with somebody next to them, and then when they're about to get to the escape pod, you can get them. I've explained this game much better than the individual did. This game is supposed to last 45 minutes. This game lasted almost 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Oof. There was a lot of table chatter, so that's not all the game that caused that delay.
In the defense of the person teaching, because this is all coming back to me as you're talking about this, right, this night. And I did avoid it because it was a large group game and I was still setting up tables. Like I was still over trying to like get people situated and teach games, and I had stuff lined up. I avoided this particular game. In the teacher's defense though, there were a lot of people sort of coming and going. It wasn't really sure who wanted to play. People were kind of jumping in and out. Like it was not the most conducive environment for a teach.
No, you were spot on, for sure.
But at that point, you just kind of go, okay, what should we play instead?
Yeah.
Right? Like typically.
And I was playing with my wife, and so my wife was also very courteous and got the opportunity to play a game with Cheryl, so I'm going to sit, and we're going to sit through this game together. We're going to go down together. Anyways, this game actually did turn out to be fun. Once the last half hour of the game, once everybody was aware, everything that was going on, everything was clicking, everybody's understanding it, the game became far more enjoyable at that point. But that learning curve was horrendous.
Comparing this teach to Golem.
Ooh. Golem was much worse.
Okay.
Yeah, Golem was much worse. Yeah, no, this was a much lighter game to teach.
Yeah, I can get that.
And also going back to the defense of the teacher, talked about the table chat going on. I mean, there was distractions all over the place.
Yeah, so that's tough.
Do give the teacher some credit, but there was still evidence of the teacher didn't know the game as well as they thought they did. But the game turned out to be very fun.
I actually remember Lydia talking about it, and she enjoyed it. Actually, pretty high praise for it. She thought that it was very skewed to the alien side of things. Like she was like, it's impossible to play this as a human. But she did have a good time. I think was grateful for everyone at the table who sat down and played.
Like I said, it was very enjoyable, and we did play at the max player count,
which is almost never a good idea.
BGG says best at 6 goes 2 to 8, and I think if you're playing it as a 2-player, it just sounds dumb because you either know you're a human or you're not. There's no surprise there. Just with the more players, I mean, the humans have the opportunity to try to scatter.
They don't have a solo version?
No, they don't. The aliens do have the opportunity. They get to move two spaces at a time. And so I had everybody convinced I was human the whole time. And I was just running away to the escape pod. I was able to stay in the shadows the whole time. And I was right close to an escape pod. One other human was getting ready to escape, and the other alien was very overtly attacking people. The other person caught somebody just kind of at the end. And so I'm like all over by myself. I'm like, hey, everybody thinks I'm getting away. And this other person's like, yeah, let's go do this. We're like 3 spaces away. And I was like, oh yeah, by the way, gotcha.
Nice.
And so for me, anyway, that's something that I really enjoy in these social deduction games, right, is like, the deception.
Hey, fellow human.
Yeah,
let's go together.
Into the van. I got candy.
That's awesome.
But it actually did turn out to be really a fun game. The teach was rough, but Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space was an enjoyable game. I would have loved to have learned it in a more
conducive environment.
Yeah. I guess there was a lot of background noise too. Overall, very fun game at the end. Very rough teach to begin with. Not necessarily anyone's fault, but you could have known the rules a little bit better.
Fantastic. Well, hey, those are some of our weekly highlights. Doesn't sound like quite as many highlights as we usually have.
But still fun, right?
But still fun to talk about.
Yeah.
So that will take us into the topic of this week's episode, and that is area movement games. So I am really curious about this. This was one that I think at one point a few weeks back, I had even suggested maybe we skip because I wasn't really sure how to differentiate this from area control, area majority, some of those things. And there is a lot of overlap with some of those games.
For sure.
But however, as we started making the lists and as I started looking at things, I was like, oh no, okay, I think I understand what's going on here. And I made my list based on kind of my interpretation of area movement and what's important about area movement in a game. But I'm curious about you two and how you, because we're going to talk about our top 5s next week, right? We're kind of reserving those. We're holding those aside. But how did you decide what was going to go on your top 5, and what makes a good area movement game? Like, what is the qualification there?
Well, let's give a little bit of a description first, a definition.
Okay, I like that. Let's start there.
So area movement mechanic in board games involves moving game pieces in different spaces. So, I mean, you think like a grid, right? A lot of those games.
Sure, yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. So area movement is usually not set in a grid or a path, but usually represents an area on the board. Usually like a geographic area.
When you say that, like immediately, like I start thinking like, Blood Rage and all these other area control games, right? Because that's what they are.
They are, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. And so often these spaces are points of conflict where armies, teams, or opponents may converge, may interact, and definitely may
fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all had experiences with Risk.
Yep.
And we've all had versions of Risks in our in our library. We've had Risks in our lives too.
Yes.
But we've all had a version of Risk in our library and in our lives. Experiences both positive, negative. I will not play Risk, but I will play some of the remakes of Risk. And actually a game I would very much like to try some point is the Risk Legacy, the first kind of legacy game that was out there.
Yeah.
But I like to stick to the lighter, not necessarily lighter, but the shorter Risk games. Like there's Risk Godstorm out there. And that was one of the last Risk games that I enjoyed. There's the Star Wars Risk version that's out there. Kind of the same thing, very much a shorter time. So when I think about these games, that's kind of what I think.
This is where my curiosity is piqued, Nathan. To me, Risk is almost the poster child for an area control game. I mean, that's what you're doing, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Right? I guess that's kind of the heart of my question is like, what also makes it an area movement game? Just that you are moving from area to area? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah. Star Wars Rebellion. Okay, that's a bad example because that's, again, area control kind of conflict. Go back to the Initiative. Do you
Okay. Yeah.
remember playing that?
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And so we had the regions of the rooms, not like Clue, because Clue you have the grid outside and then each room was one space. But in Initiative, you had the sections of the building that you were investigating in were all separated.
Okay. Now, and I can wrap my brain around that. That's a good example, I think.
Metal Dawn, which is kind of a crappy game, but one that's in my coal pile for this year. And I will coal it.
Yes, he will.
Show off.
Yeah, I know how to coal. But there's 9 locations, 9 regions that are on the board, and units can go there. This is a cooperative game. Players are combined against the AI. So you're moving to these regions to try to prevent the AI, disrupt the troops that the AI is sending. So you're defending these regions. Another great one that I just barely learned that I know, Andy, you had interest in, and I have it set up downstairs on my table to play with my wife. And I think it's one that both of you will very much enjoy, and that is Legends of Andor.
Yeah, that one looks good.
Very similar to Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth.
Okay. Yep.
Very similar style of games. That didn't actually label itself as an area movement game, but that is very much an area movement
Yeah, I can see that because you're moving from area to area. There's multiple things to do in each area. There's conflict in the areas, but you're not necessarily trying to control them. Right.
Yeah.
It's not about controlling the area. It's just more about exploration and discovery.
And this Legends of Andor, which is all I did was play the introductory game, which teaches the rules, and then it has a second part which expands those rules, gives you everything, and
you were
very
sold.
well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well done. The rules, the way the slow trickle on the rules is great. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Jaws of the Lion, which is why I'm excited to get my wife to play this, because I think once that rules trickle in, it becomes very easier to eat up additional rules and be able to expand that play. There's 2 additional boxes and the Liberation of Reinhold, I think, or whatever is the newest rendition in the Andor universe. But this is one that I'm very excited to get both of you to play.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. So this is an older game.
Yeah.
And it's been around for a while. I've heard things about it. I actually have a really good friend who plays this with his son. He says that it's great. His son really likes it. They play it together. They don't play as many games, but this is one that made their shelf, and they play it all the time. So I'm excited. we're going to get that to the table soon, hopefully.
Yeah, going to that same example, I think this would be great for Doug, you and Seth and Brigham and Andy. All of your kids, I think, would like this. Caden would very much enjoy this game because it is cooperative experience game. I'm super excited, and I wish I had played it before I wrote my top 5.
I don't know how many times I have looked at this game on the store shelf and have been so close to pulling the trigger to pick it up and never have. So I'm really excited to try it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
the great
for sure.
thing for me is this game was gifted to me. All 3 boxes were gifted to me. And as I've opened these boxes, the previous owners superbly organized everything. This was the same person that gave me Great Western Trail, where the previous owner had sculpted cowboys out of clay.
Nice.
There's so much content in there. There's a 5 and 6 player expansion content. There's little small expansion that's in there as well. Each box is full of goodness. Fantasy Flight did the first one, and then it's Cosmos that did box 2 and box 3 and on all the stuff that goes with those. Legends of Andor has turned out to be an amazing game, one that I'm very much anxious to play and experience all the content that's in there, because it's going to be something that I can set up on my table downstairs, leave it there. My wife and I can get to it. We can go through it. I mean, I played just through the introductory one on my own, and I had to convince myself to stop and wait for my wife, because this is something that I think she could play, but I was really anxious
Yeah.
to go on.
I've had to do that with a few games too. I know exactly the feeling you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yep. We digress a little bit because this is not the Legends of Andor, episode. However, that makes me really excited, and I think those are some good examples, and I think that helps me kind of understand where you're coming from, because I think it's similar to where I sort of approach this from a little bit. Andy, I'm curious for you, like, how did you differentiate between like area control and area movement?
Well, it was very similar, and I noticed that a lot of the games on all of our lists fall into that Risk style game. You know, I'm looking at StarCraft, I'm looking at Axis and Allies, even Small World, right? A lot of these that have that where you're battling and moving and taking over areas where has that area control element. However, there definitely are some that don't have that. Teotihuacan, City of Gods. There's no area control there, but there's interactions. You're going on it's a rondo, basically. You're going around the edge of the board on these areas. You move on your turn, you get to move 1 to 3 spaces, but you are interacting. Where you go, it is important because you're going to be interacting with other people's workers. For example, on my turn, I'm going to move one of my workers. My workers are dice. I'm going to move one of my workers, one of those 1 to 3 spaces. I have 3 options I can do. I can choose to worship. It's just a single space that I can place my worker in, and I'm going to gain ability, but then that worker's locked down until somebody else comes in and takes that space away from me, or I use an action to just gain all my workers back. I can go in and just collect cocoa, but if I'm going to do that, I have to look at the dice that are available that are currently on that space before I move my die in there. So everybody has a color of dice. I'm going to look at all the different colors that are on that action space prior to moving my die there, and I'm going to gain cocoa equal to the number of different dice there. Now, if I move in there to do the main action, I have to spend cocoa equal to the number of different colored dice there. There's no conflict in the game. There's a race to do certain things, but there's no direct conflict or area control really, or much of any of that. But you are moving and you are interacting with elements of what other players are doing in the game. In that way, it still has an area movement feel without the area majority control or influence control aspect of it. So I thought Teotihuacan was a great example of an area movement without the conflict that so many of these games have.
Yeah, I haven't played that one yet, but as you were describing that to me, it reminded me a little bit of a game that we actually just recently played, even though it's been out for a few years, and that is Maracaibo.
Yes, such a great game.
Yeah, that's a fantastic game. Also, I would consider that, area movement, right? You're
For sure.
moving around that rondel, and based on, so much of the strategy you develop throughout that game is about where I'm going to move, what I'm going to do at the various locations, and how I'm going to interact with those locations. So movement is a pivotal part of the strategy, which for me, I think was the most important thing I was looking at when I was looking at area movement games.
Sure.
So that there was a lot more of a distinction between area movement and area control. In fact, on my top 5, none of my games on my top 5 are area control. They don't have any area control or area influence at all.
I think the stronger mechanics for area movement fall outside of the category of area control, in my opinion. You look at Maracaibo, right? There's no direct conflict at all. However, you do have to pay attention to what other people are doing,
Yes.
because there are certain things that they're going to come and do before you, and then you don't get to do it. And then there's a lot of interaction with the different locations you're going to. So I think that the movement is far more important in games like that than it really is in games like Axis and Allies, or than it is in games like Small World. Yeah, you have to move from area to area to play the game, but it's not such a strong integral part of the game. It's just one of those things that, okay, I'm going to move one space and attack here.
Rolling that back just a little bit, that Maracaibo does have a path that you're following. You can't go backwards on that path. And with area movement games, it is more open. Kind of, I don't want to use the term sandbox, but you can go anywhere. And Maracaibo does have that path that you can only go forward on.
That's true.
But it is still a really great experience and a really great game.
So, and that's interesting because without like sort of a concrete definition, I don't know that I would have even made that distinction.
Yeah.
Like I would have just solidly said, oh yeah, area movement. No worries. But I can see where you're coming from though. Like I get what you're, where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. You brought up a point, Doug, that as soon as you mentioned that none of your top 5 had area majority on it, I had to confirm on mine, and none of my top 5 have area majority on it either. That's probably one of those big things that kind of helps define, like you said, Andy, what makes it great is not necessarily that it's an area control. That element does go hand in hand with area movement, but those games that kind of stick out apparently to, I'm just looking at yours real quick, Andy.
I have one that has some majority influence, and that's it. It's one that is not heavy take that.
For the majority then, 14 out of our top 15 is all about area movement and nothing about area control.
What are some of your favorite area movement games?
So one that I've really enjoyed that I don't play nearly enough because it's kind of hard on the finger is Ice Cool. The way that it just uses everything that's in the box. You open up the box, there's another box, there's another box, there's another box. Then you will set those boxes together and you'll use a little penguin clip to hold those into place. And then it's a fish clip. I think it's a fish clip. Everybody starts in a room and your goal is to try to go through 3 doorways. However you go through those doorways or whatever direction you go through it is fine. But you have 3 people that are runners that are trying to go through these goals. And then you have one person who's trying to catch the other penguins. And it is all a flick and catch. Really kind of hard on your finger. But there's some videos out there that if I would suggest to go check out some Ice Cool videos. And there's some people that, they've got some impressive skills where they will flick their penguin and they can get it to go around and through 3 doors and come back, and then you can go over a wall, and so they could flick it so it would go up and over the wall and land right where they were wanting it. Somebody has done a lot of flicking practice.
Wow.
You really should take the time and just go check out some of these Ice Cool videos, because you'll be just like, that's an impressive skill. Not really worth anything in the world, but that's still a pretty impressive skill.
Nice.
There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
And someone has perfected just about everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
You mentioned Maracaibo, Doug, and Nathan's right. It has a path, right? It'll fork off a little bit.
Right.
But if you want to find a more sandbox style area movement game that is set in fact, the board almost looks identical, at least as far as the map goes, that's Merchants and Marauders. So you're still playing in the Caribbean in Merchants and Marauders. However, you do get the opportunity to move anywhere you want. And you're basically moving around the Caribbean trying to chase down rumors and chase down missions, hunt down other players that have bounties on them that are pirates, or trying to chase down merchants and try to steal their loot that's on all the goodies that they have on their boats if you're a pirate. Very, very heavy area movement on that game. You're kind of all over the place on that map, trying to get certain things done. You go to one of the taverns, chase down a rumor. It's on across the board. You try to get across the board, stopping in different places to bury your gold, to get points, all in an effort to get glory. That also makes me think of Sea of Legends.
Okay. It made me think of that too. As you were describing that, I was like, Sea of Legends, which is, I think, a great area movement game, and one that I only got to play once, and one that I would really like to play again.
We need to play that again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful game. And I honestly enjoy Sea of Legends more than Merchants and Marauders. I love Merchants and Marauders. It's a fun game. Sea of Legends takes that to a whole new level with the app and everything else. And yeah, once again, you're in the Caribbean and their area movement is a huge part of the game.
That's awesome. As I was thinking about these games, probably one of the very first ones that popped into my mind was actually The Goonies, Never Say Die. So this is one that I played a little bit with an older game group and a little bit with my kids. And it's actually one that I think you guys would like quite a bit. This is a dungeon crawl, Andy.
Yay!
And it's the Goonies. So
And it's The Goonies.
Hey, you guys!
So there is one player who has to take on the role of the GM, the Goondocks Master.
Nice. Wow. Nice.
And then you take on the other characters from the movie. Through a series of scenarios, you're playing out the events in the movie. But movement plays such an integral part because it's essentially an exploration game. You are going from room to room. Like if you're in the caverns, you're going from room to room. If you're in the town, you're going from place to place. Freeform, right? You can come and go as you wish. However, every room has a surprise. Whether it's a monster or a trap or something to be discovered or an objective, there's something to kind of be unveiled as you move from place to place. Certain paths may get cut off from behind you, but that's all kind of like an organic story-driven thing that kind of happens. At its core, it's an exploration game. What it lacks in sort of depth as a dungeon crawler, as a game that lets you do a lot of character development or whatever, it really makes up for in the fact that it's more light and fast-paced, and you can just kind of go. It doesn't try to pretend to be anything more than what it is, and what it is great. And,
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that is one that I would actually like to try with you guys sometime just to see if you like it. Again, as I was thinking about this mechanism in my head, I was like, oh, that's a great game for area movement.
Yeah.
Whoever plays Chunk has to do the truffle shuffle.
Why are you looking at me? That's not very nice. I don't like feeling pressured.
You know, thinking of that, you describing Goonies made me think of a game that's not on my list, but I'm pretty sure it falls into this category, and that's Bardsung. Bardsung has map tiles that come out, and they're not grid. It is separated by different areas that's separated by the artwork itself. So you can
Is this
have
the one that I wanted, the Sharpie?
Yes, that is the one.
Watch your dirty mouth.
Yeah, this is the one where we had Andy just fuming because we're like, we need to put Sharpies to these. We can't see the lines.
We need to define these areas.
A little bit of a side tangent here, but like I like that decision and hate it at the same time.
Yeah.
I love letting the art sort of be your guide, and let that. But at the same time, it also didn't really work that great because when you've got that many figures on a map, you cover a lot of the art up. And there were a lot of times when we're like, okay, how many sections is in this room? How is this room divided?
Well, if you're going to do that, you need to make sure the art is still, I mean, you can make it beautiful, but still make it very clear as to where each of the different regions are on that tile, where each area is, and it shouldn't be that difficult to really do it. But there were some that were fairly ambiguous in that game, that's for sure. I think that was honestly the biggest point of confusion in that game. But
it was. For me, it wasn't really like a down, like I don't want to play this again,
right.
But it really did make me hesitant to play it again because that confusion of, where do I stand? When we start putting mobs in here, where are they at? What's full? But it was a great game.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed it. I only got to play it the one time because you wouldn't let me put Sharpies on it.
Yep, you got banned.
I did. Got sent to the little kids table.
It is a good point to make, though, when we talk about movement games. Any game that involves movement, you need to have clearly defined spaces. It does need to be clear to the player at a glance what they can and can't do in terms of movement, where they can go. Movement rules are one of those things that, boy, if you mess up movement rules, you've tanked your game.
For sure.
Even if the game really isn't even about movement, if you don't do it right, if you make it a slog for people to move around the board and do different things, you're in trouble. And one of the games that actually does that really well, that I wouldn't even consider an area movement game, because movement it's something you do, but it's not core to the game. Actually, Cthulhu Death May Die.
Yeah.
Which has fantastic tiles. It has that great art, but it actually has clear lines and arrows that show where the doors connect and where things are and, where you can go on the map. And it's clearly defined region by region. When a game does that and lets players just freeform move, that's huge.
Contrast that. Another game that I prepped that was in my collection that I hadn't played. So pulling off my shelf of shame was a game called 5 Seals of Magic. Actually did turn out to be pretty fun, but going back, another one of my pet peeves, this was one of the worst rule books ever.
What was the name of this one again?
5 Seals of Magic.
Okay, this was the one the other night that you were trying to. Okay,
yeah. I mean,
that was calling like cards tiles and tiles cards and doing all kinds of stuff.
It didn't call anything cards. Everything. This is tiles. This is tiles. This is tiles. And then on page 3, it started referring to them as cards.
That's awesome. Wow.
So I'm like, as soon as I see cards, I'm like, okay, what cards? So I go back and it has the list of components. I'm like, there are no cards. So what is cards? It didn't give a clear description of saying like seal cards. It just said you take the cards and shuffle the cards and do this. So I'm mad at this point, right? I'm like, I can't even learn this game. And then also going back to that kind of that art design on it, 3 colors of dice. You're going to pick 3 of them, and then you're going to roll them. And there are these seals that are all over the board that are represented by a die face. So they're anywhere from 2 to 6 pips. And to break that seal, you need to have a combination of the same color of dice, and you can use either one die that has the matching or exceeds the face value, or you can combine 2 dice of the same color to do that. Or you can use these scrolls that you pick up along the way to augment your dice. Again, once you pick up one of these seals, the artwork made it look like, because when you pick up a seal, you put your character there, but the artwork also made it look like there was a path around. So I could shimmy around somebody. First time we allowed somebody to kind of shimmy around that, and then we're like, what's the point of leaving your person there? Because your person is supposed to be there to block your opponents from moving on, because there's no steps movement. You can just say, I'm going to go over here, or I'm going to go clear over here on the other side of the board. As long as there's a path, I can get there. But the artwork just kind of makes it so that it's like, looks like there's enough space there that I can shimmy around.
It makes it look like you can do something that doesn't thematically make any sense.
Right. And the rules have no examples, no layouts. They have artwork all over the place, but none of it conducive to teaching the game.
Wow.
And it's a fairly recent game, 2014. So 10 years old.
Old enough to be problematic, but young enough that it should have known better. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of those things that design graphics should have been clear, give some very clear examples in the rule book, and then in the FAQ, you try to find some information on BGG. There's no FAQ there. There's no help there. It just is ambiguous. I mean, the game was kind of fun, but frustration kind of makes me go, yeah, I got this off my coal pile, or off my shelf of shame, and it's going straight to the coal pile.
That was going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is this joining the other games being cold?
Yeah.
In February?
So I will give it another shot, but
I'm sensing some backpedaling going on here.
I'm 95% committed to, this is going. I have a label already for this going to the coal pile.
Shelf space, here we come.
Yeah. I got told I needed to clear out some space, so I got told I have issues.
Can confirm.
Yes.
Unlike the rest of us.
Yeah.
What is it if a bunch of drunks go to another drunk and say, "Hey, you drink too much"?
Wow.
How does that?
It's a party.
Is it just a party?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's just a party at that point. So it's just a game night.
Do they all just laugh and go out for drinks? Is that how that works? Okay.
You're right. Next round's on me.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so I have one that I was thinking about that I thought fit into this area movement, but it's not troops and it's not characters. I know I taught this to Andy at one point. I can't remember. It's been a little while. Juicy Fruits.
Oh yeah,
I haven't played that. I'm interested in that, but I haven't played it.
Okay, so it's a game that I really enjoy, and it has been a little while, so mechanically I can't remember exactly how it's played, but I do know you have a cart on your island, and then you've got like boats and fruit and all this stuff that's also on the island, kind of limited by the things that are on your island in terms of where you can move or how far you can move. The more you move around, the more you clear those things off, collect them, you get more space, your island is clearing up. You can kind of, for victory points, fill it back up with other things. You have this little cart. The further that you move it, the more resources you're going to get, which I thought was a really clever play on this quote unquote area movement or the movement mechanic. The puzzle at its core is trying to find the very most efficient and longest distance path on your island so that you can move and take resources. It is like a really fun efficiency puzzle to solve. It is all based on movement. So that was another one that kind of came to my mind. I really like Juicy Fruits. That's one I need to get out and play again soon, because when we first got that, when it first came out, I remember it was a big hit. Like I played that a lot with my kids. I played that a lot with Lydia in particular. I need to revisit that one.
Yeah, if I recall, that is one of the games you taught to me at your first SaltCon.
I think it was. Yeah, that sounds right. And an interesting take on area movement.
We've rattled on quite a bit here. Some quick games that I want to hit on that just to mention that are still maybe on my shelf of shame, but I'm anxious to get. Cyclades, been on my shelf for a while. This is another game that I inherited. I really want to play this. There's a new version of that coming out this year. Looking forward to trying that. I'm also looking forward to trying what I have.
Now, some people call this Cyclades.
They could, and they'd probably be more correct than I am.
I've heard it pronounced that way, so I'm just clarifying that I don't actually know which one is correct. I just thought I'd throw that out there for people who may have heard it Cyclades.
Lords of Hellas is another one that I inherited that I haven't played. Cry Havoc I just got, and I'm anxious to play that. I got that ready to go. The Omicron Protocol is a newer one that I picked up from last year. I'm really anxious to play that. Highly rated game. It's 8.6 on BGG. 1 to 4 players, so it might be one that maybe I start off playing solo just to kind of get the handle of it. But very much looking forward to playing that one. And of course, I didn't even mention Star Wars Rebellion, one of my all-time favorite games. Oddly enough, not one of my top 5 area movement games.
That surprises me.
Yeah. Shogun. Shogun is a great game. 2006. This is like one of my first experiences with a cube tower that's part of the game. Your armies are battling their farmers and civilians that are out there as well. And whenever battle occurs, you're going to take everybody and you're going to drop them in the tower. And the tower has shelves, not slants that are going to roll everything, but it has shelves. Not everything is going to come out of the tower. So kind of like
La Granja or No?
No, you put everything in there and then you just expose the tower at that point. But electronic game, Dark Tower.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah,
Dark Tower, where you put stuff in there. Yeah, I got it when it first came out. Then I culled it, and then I was sad that I culled it, so I reacquired it.
But you don't have any issues.
But I don't have issues. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I reacquired it for cheaper than I sold it for. So
okay, that's good.
It's a win.
That's a win.
Just some of those games that I'm anxious to get to the table again.
A few that I want to rattle off as well. There are several Tiny Epic games that fit into this category. There's Tiny Epic Pirates, Tiny Epic Crimes, Tiny Epic Quest. That's one I haven't played in several years. That's a fun one. One on my shelf of shame that I bought used, but I have not played it yet, and that's Dungeonology, The Expedition. I really want to play that game. I need to get the rules read for it. Eclipse New Dawn. That's one that I've owned for probably a decade and have not played.
I don't have any games like that.
No, of course not.
Now, isn't there a brand new one?
Yeah.
Eclipse New Dawn for the Galaxy or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. Which I didn't pick up because I haven't played the first one.
I want to play it, though.
Yeah.
It looks good.
It does look good. The Colonists, that's one I have played, but it's been years since I played that. Windward, it was one of my first Kickstarters, and I played it once, and it left such a sour taste in my mouth because I played with Dave, and he broke the game in the first play.
Oh, that's bad times.
And
tale as old as time.
I need to play it again without the bonus point tiles that are optional. That's how he broke the game. It lasted 2 rounds. It was literally like a 20-minute game. It should be like an hour-and-a-half game.
Oh, that is bad times.
Yeah,
indeed.
it was. I'm like, well, that's lame. That's not coming to the table anytime soon.
It is hard to believe that scenario exists, that didn't get play tested out.
Seriously.
There wasn't someone along the lines who said, hey, just so we know, if this combo is out, somebody could end the game in 2 rounds.
Yeah, it was bad. And not only that, like the bonus tiles were worth way more points than just what you're trying to do in the game. And it's really was pretty easy to do. I think he gained like 2 bonus tiles and then did one other thing. I got 9 points in one or something like that. Like I said, it's been years since I've played it. It's been sitting on my shelf, and whenever I look at it, gets my gander up a little bit. My blood pressure rises. So I need to just sit down, read the rules again, play it without the bonus content, and just see if it's You have Windward, Doug.
I do. It looked really cool. And at the time, I had no idea that you owned it. And it looked fantastic. This was when they were doing crowdfunding for
the second one, right?
Yeah, it was the reprinting with the expansion.
Right.
And I looked into it a little bit, and I had heard people say that there were like a few little problematic things, but that they fixed them all with the second printing and everything. But then I heard in between me funding that and it fulfilling, I had heard your experience with it. It never really took off. I put it on the shelf and it's just sitting there. And we need to play that.
We do.
We need to play Windward.
And maybe they did fix the issues that it had. This was one of the first games that I bought and was really excited about. It was one of my first Kickstarters, and I'm notorious that if I buy a game, even if it's meh, I'll buy the expansions for it because I have issues too.
I've been there, done that.
And this is one of those that I'm like, yep, I'm not funding the expansion for this. I mean, it was that bad of a thing that I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing it.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah. Because I do think there's a good game there. It's in there somewhere. We just got to go find it.
I think so.
Well, I think you guys have about covered it. I don't really have a whole lot more to add. The only one that I will just make a quick mention of, because I do feel like the movement aspect of it is so cool, and that is the unmatched game system. So much of that combat revolves around moving around on the map. It revolves around range, whether you're melee or can hit from a range to distance. And the maps, all of them, are designed in such a way that they are zoned into areas, so that each circle or area that you can go to has a color or multiple colors, as the case may be. You are considered in a zone based on that color. So if you're sending in that color, all other colors that match on those circles are considered in your zone. The way movement works and the way it's rather free flowing, really be strategic about where you move, when to boost movement, when to go in for the hit, when to back out to protect yourself. All of those things, I think, make movement a really integral and important part of the Unmatched series of games.
That's a great group of games. Tune in next week. We'll talk about our top 5. We've kind of already alluded to those.
Yeah, in fact, we probably have missed some, and maybe, in fact, those will be talked about next week.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You're probably listening to us going, well, what about this one? Well, what about this one? The truth is, probably talking about it because it's one of our favorites.
Probably. Until next time.
We'll see you at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/Meeple Nation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_Nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.